Where did the name The Live Revolution come from? I have to assume, because you guys are awesome live, that there's a big focus on the live aspect of the band, but you could maybe give the history of the name.
It's not necessarily like I want to make up something. I want to make up something imaginative, but I was in this band Tomfoolery for a couple years with, some awesome musicians, and we were starting to build like a sort of college kind of crowd that was getting big, and we were packing places and kicking butt, and it was great. But it was like, as opportunities started to come out, and like, man, having an 8-piece, 7-piece band is I don't know. It's like I'm purposely trying to make my life difficult. You know what I mean? And it's, like people would come and go or not be able to do things. You'd get some recording opportunity that would be, some friend of yours is like, yo, I've got this awesome studio I can get you, but you have to come for these dates. And then people in the band wouldn't be able to do it. So you'd miss the opportunity, or you'd book a gig, but something got miscommunicated and you show up and some of the people don't show up, and then you got to do the gig alone or whatever. And like things like this were happening to me. And I'm very sensitive to that kind of stuff because it's kind of like, I think I wanted to have a band. I always wanted to have a Pearl Jam or a Pink Floyd, or, I wanted to have this sort of brotherhood, and I wanted to kind of do my part and put my creativity in, but have other people sort of do it as well, which, it's just, I guess it's tough. I have like a very kind of, I'm so passionate and I'm so driven that I'm sure I take up a lot of space, physically and, musically. And I think it came to a point where like Tomfoolery was bothering me so much that I was working so hard for this band that was kind of like an equal, like we were all in the band equally, but it was like I was doing everything and it was draining me. And so I just decided I'm going to start my own band and put my name in it. And it was never something I was excited about. Like I always wanted to be behind a name. Like I didn't want to come out kind of and put my name there, but it was a purely functional thing where it was like, yeah, if I want to continue to do the thing that clearly I want to keep doing, I have to be able to establish relationships and have my own name move forward, just so clubs remember me, or I have like trust from the people who I've been working with and building with. I don't want to keep starting again. And, so the first thing we did was I just threw names after my name. Like I probably put like 2 seconds of thought into it. Like that's like, it was just like, the first thing was like the Raw Blue. I don't even know what that means. It kind of sounds disturbing.
It sounds provocative.
Yeah. I don't know. It was probably just liking words like it's raw music, and it's like, maybe the blue was supposed to represent some sort of blues or soul or something. I'm not sure. So I kind of went with that name, and it was just like, all right, let's do a gig, And then at some point it just became Casey Roberts for like a short amount of time. Like I think there might be one record that's just Casey Roberts that doesn't. And then I decided to call it The Live Revolution. And like the simple thing behind it was, again, it was just like, I want to set a bar for what I'm trying to do. And The Live Revolution sounds like, like at the time it was like, well, how the hell do you have a live revolution? I mean, that's a pretty presumptive thing to say. I mean, a revolution, like what, you're the live revolution? And it wasn't about that. It was just about kind of like setting a little fire under the ass. It was like, well, if we're going to be in a fucking 8-piece live band, let's make it like the best band we can, let's really push this. And I also sort of believe, like, in terms of names, as much as you can try to put something clever, or everybody sits down and writes down 1,000 names, I think at the end of the day, your name becomes what people associate with the band. So it's like, at first you hear a band name, you're like, that doesn't sound so great. But if you end up loving that music, after a while, that name melts into something you love, because you're just like, I like this band, So it was just sort of a name. And at this point, I'm sticking with it.
That's my name, and I'm sticking to it. Yeah, it's hard to be called The Live Revolution and have too many bad shows in a row,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I figured, like it would either self-destruct or keep going.
Yeah. So in 2010, I moved from Ottawa to Toronto. I was there for a decade. And then I hadn't seen you since 2003, 2004 when I was in London. And it's like, there's no Facebook, you don't stay in touch. And then suddenly I'm in Toronto and I keep running into you. So I was working at Honey Jam, which
Oh
is
yeah.
an event for upcoming female artists. Like I think Nelly Furtado got a big break at Honey Jam back in the day. And I was working Honey Jam and you were there, and it had been so long that I was like, Casey, like I think I recorded you, and you were playing guitar for one of the female performers at Honey Jam. And then, I don't know, a week later, you're somewhere and I'm there too. And then we're both at the same like you kept saying, like, man, are you like a part of everything? Like you were everywhere.
It did. It felt like you were a part of like every event in Toronto.
Yeah. So you were everywhere as a musician, and I was everywhere as like kind of a business guy or a promoter or something. So we kept running into each other. So you released Between the Cracks in 2012, and that's where I started to be a part of that universe of Casey Roberts and the Live Revolution, and being familiar with where you're at musically at that point, and the band. And then I started coming out to see you guys. So you had your Nirvana tribute night, playing the beaches every year. I went several years in a row. Basically, if I was trying to impress people, I would bring them out to a Casey Roberts concert, because I knew they'd be impressed with the musicianship. I know that they could dance, which is fun when you're bringing out people. And I know that we converted a lot of fans at those concerts. So I wanted to talk about Between the Cracks a little bit. So that album had your song Contact, which has become like a staple of the band. It's one of your most played songs online on Spotify. It shows up at most of your live shows. Like, people want to hear that live. How did that song come together, and why do you think that that's become kind of a staple?
Contact. Well, first of all, that record was written. I wrote it in about, I would say, like 3 weeks or something like that.
The whole record.
So it was like we'd already done our fundraiser for Park Del Funk 2. We were in the studio recording that, and it was taking longer because we were trying to do this big thing. And it kind of, it was our first Kickstarter of sorts. It wasn't a Kickstarter, actually. My ex-girlfriend like helped me build our own site. It was crazy, our own fundraising site. But we had this record, and we wanted to keep people engaged, and we wanted to reward people for their patience in waiting. And I was just like, hey guys, what if we just like go in the studio one day, we'll record a record, and we'll just like write this thing. And I think we had like a couple rehearsals, and then we went to Metalworks and we recorded the whole record in one day. And I think Contact, like, because I was like, I want to have a 4 on the floor tune. I mean, we were already working on Drift Away and some other, like Drift Away was already an idea. We already had some things that we liked for Park Del Funk 2, but it was like, I wanted to have a dance song on this record, because a lot of the other tunes on Between the Cracks are very like jammy, funky. Like, we just kind of threw together like a lot of instrumentals and funky things that, we could just throw in at shows for fun. But like Contact, it was like I sat down and I programmed this house beat, like this kind of like funky house beat at like a respectable tempo. And then I wrote 2 songs over it. I wrote one, and then I went, okay, let me try another one. And so one of them was Contact, and the other one ended up being on Park Del Funk 2. It was called Open Your Eyes. So like those 2 songs are just like 2 different song versions I had over the same beat when I wrote them. And Contact felt like a lot more fun. Like Contact felt like it had a really kind of quirky, positive energy. And I was like, yeah, this, so we threw that one on, and yeah, I guess it's just super catchy and light, and I think that's, and it starts off with that synth line, which I think people like, the so that always kind of gets
that's your milkshake that brings all the people to the dance floor. I might have messed up some of that phrase, that quote or whatever.
Yeah, but that wouldn't fit in the song the same way.
Yeah, it's all good. That's all good. So you mentioned Metalworks. So again, I forget the history of this stuff. But you mentioned Metalworks. So I was at Metalworks for 7 years. I did events, I
Remember
did
that?
sales, I did promotion. And I just remembered, and this is huge. I don't know how I forget these things, but um, you know, Metalworks started because of Triumph, the band Triumph. They've sold 40 million records. Like they were as big as it gets back, it was them and Rush were the two big Canadian rock bands. And the city of Mississauga announced that they were going to name a street Triumph Lane. There was a new street. And me as like a 25-year-old, it was my job to organize this entire
Oh, that
event.
was you. You were
Yeah.
the one who organized that.
Yeah. So I
Remember that now.
have to organize an event, the naming of a street. So like this huge Mississauga, like official city event, the naming of a street. I'm representing one of the biggest Canadian bands of all time. And they're like, okay, we need quotes from Don Cherry, from the mayor. We want to sell memorabilia to raise money for whatever. We want live performances. The whole band is going to be there. We're going to allow super fans to fly in from around the world. Like the venue only fits like, I don't know, 200, 300 people, but we're going to allow super fans to fly from all over the world with like special tickets. And I'm 25 and I'm organizing all of this. And I just remembered this. And the idea I came up with was, well, Triumph hasn't performed. Like you can't ask them to perform. So I said, look, I know like the most talented musicians and bands in the GTA. What if I get today's top performers to each do a Triumph song in their honor to show like the music lives on and like the influence they've had? And I asked you to play, and you guys played Never Surrender, which is like, my favorite Triumph song and one of the harder ones to do. Like you guys were ambitious to pick that. You could pick one that's just a few chords, right? More.
That wouldn't fit our group.
Right. So do you remember this? You guys played Never Surrender for the actual band Triumph, and it was awesome.
Well, the ones that stayed around.
Oh, they weren't all there by the end.
I think the drummer, what's his name, stayed. The guy who runs
Gil.
Metalworks.
Yeah, Gil Moore. So that was my boss for 7 years.
Yeah, I just wanted Rick to be there. But you know what? We ended up recording that as a video because we did that. I think that was somewhere around the same time as we were getting ready for Parked Up Punk 2 or something like that. Like I think we were doing the fundraising around that time because I remember that was one of the songs we made a video for. And I sent that to Rick and he got back because that was, if I want to impress someone, it's him,
the guitarist,
right?
Yeah.
Guitarist, singer, songwriter guy, and so I sent it. So we sent him the recording and he dug it and he like retweeted it and, cause and then the really cool thing is somewhere on YouTube, there's these awesome musicians in Colombia who are going to music school who did our cover of Never Surrender.
Nice.
And there's a video of them doing our arrangement of Never Surrender, which was really cool.
I remember asking Gil, I'm like, man, what do you think? Like after you guys played, and he's like, man, those guys are super talented. So I guess because it was a long event, like it was, 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock or something. So I guess at some point, maybe some of the band members are a little older. They didn't stay for the whole thing, but
I wouldn't stay. Yeah.
That's all good. So you had mentioned before that back with Tomfoolery, you had more of the hip hop stuff within the music. And then, over the years,
I thought it was okay to rap.
It is okay to rap.
Is it? All right. Cool.
Yeah. And over the years, you just said you've gone more into the soulful singing. But you're super talented as with the rapping. Have you ever considered doing a rap album? And I'm serious,
No, I've never considered.
How
that.
dare you? How dare you share that?
I you know what? It's like with hip hop, there definitely is there's some things there. There's some tricky territory there. And I'm not saying it's not cool for a white guy to become a rapper, but you have to really be drenched in the history. I think, you really have to be able to go out there and represent and live it. And it's a lifestyle. Like that's at least how it strikes me. The way rap and hip hop affect me is the same way Jazz affects me is the same way rock affects me. Like they each have their own world and color, and it's like food, you know what I mean? And it's like I just can't bring myself to make the same meal forever the same way. You know, I love too much of it, and it's like with rap, the thing that drew me towards it, I mean, was the rhythm. Like I love it as a tool. I mean, there was that point where the rap became instead of the guitar solo. Do you know what I mean? Like in songs, like it was like, you know, like TLC Waterfalls or something. It's like instead of where the guitar solo would go in the pop song, the rap went, you know, or like, you know, Beyonce or whatever. Like, you know, that's kind of like what happened. And I just like the tool of it, right? And the people who really like, I remember being 17 and hearing like that first Eminem record, but like I remember friends playing me Tribe Called Quest, and the way that like some of that music, you know, Midnight Marauders and those kind of records, the way they started to grow on you. When I discovered, one of my good friends introduced me to Mos Def, Black on Both Sides, which I would say was probably my favorite hip hop record. It may still be, like if I had to give one record like that I think from front to end is kind of a masterpiece, like I feel like Black on Both Sides. Again, from like, to me it's like, it's not about the beats, it's not about the rap, it's about the overall creative playground of it, the prolificness of Mos Def, like the way it goes from like Umi Says to like way more intense stuff to like, I used to love that song he did with Busta Rhymes, Do It Now, off that record, where the two of them are like going back and forth and like playing characters and like playing off each other. And it's one of those like Pharaoh Monchi kind of choruses where like, you know, there's all these little traps in the chorus where like one guy says one thing, they answer it, they come back in together, like very like that's sort of just like woo, like, you know, live, like that would just fucking crushed, right? Like where it's like, you know, they're doubling like the way like J5 does or something like that. And in that song, I remember like there was like in every verse there was a part where this organ gets held, this creepy organ chord, and the rap would change around the creepy organ chord. Or like he had that song, what was it, Love, that's like the beat is like brushes on drums, and it's like this really close sound of the brushes. And I just loved that shit. And his lyrical stuff and what he talked about was super conscious. Like if you listen to shit like Mathematics is such a smart song off that record, where he like, you know, does all the math of sort of ways that the, you know, the system is racist and all this kind of stuff by counting, like using, it was just so smart. And then I discovered Talib Kweli through him and Black Star. And then Talib became my favorite rapper through around the time where I was in Tomfoolery. And we had this gig where we got to play at sort of a side stage at Molson Park with the Black Eyed Peas, and I think it was Rihanna and Talib. And it was like, I went to an after party and Talib was there and I got to meet him, and I was like, this is fucking rad, you know? Like I really liked him. And so that was the kind of stuff where hip hop, but it was like, so I was like listening to this stuff and getting all of these like flows and feelings, and like that's where I feel like I am as a musician is I react to feelings. So it's like when music has a certain feeling and I see, oh look, this person's using this tool to emote this kind of feeling, I like that. That's what I'm drawn to. And I think that I'm drawn to that more than I'm drawn to aesthetics. Some people seem to be like, aesthetics is a big thing. Like, are you staying true to this sound? Are you using the right instruments? Are you using the right production? Or is this from this world? Does it fit into this box? And yes, like expand within this sort of aesthetic. And to me, I've always been much more like, no. I want the thing that makes you feel like this. I want to figure out how to put that in. And so hip hop to me it's playful. It's funny. It gives you license to be a little bit cocky in a cheeky way, but like without being serious. And it also is just like brilliant wordplay, like fast, rhythmic, poetic wordplay. And it's like, how the fuck am I not going to do that, especially over a funk thing? And again, it comes back to the Pocket Rollers, right? Like growing up listening to them do it, it's like you have to, you know, Nigel, the guy who was rapping in that band, like the beats he had to rap over and the way he hit rhythms and flows and just the thought he put into like the way he sent his message across. It's just like too fun. It's like, I don't want to not do that. Like, it's fun, you know? And it's the same way I feel about jazz harmony. It's like, you know, some people go, oh, you know, like simpler chords are going to appeal to more people, but it's like, yeah, but it's so fun to have this different emotion that comes from this more sophisticated grouping of chords that kind of, so it's, I feel like for me, you know, hip hop was a tool, you know, and it was one of those things I appreciated the same way I appreciate like punk rock, or jungle music. Like, I'm not a jungle aficionado. I'm not a punk aficionado. But when I used to hang out with skaters growing up and listening to punk and hear how they felt about No Effects or all the, you know, Pennywise and the passion that came out of them, I got it. I was like, yeah, like that is fucking awesome. And I love this scene. And then I'd go to the jungle clubs and you'd see everyone just dancing all night like they are touched by some spirit from the sky and they're dancing the jungle. And there's like kind of there was a kindness in the scene, and you see all these like kind of things, like somebody falls, everyone picks them up, or are you doing okay? Or like, yeah, man, we're just here to have fun. Let's do this, you know? And I just like, I love these scenes, and what makes them passionate is just like, I can't be a hip hop artist. I can't be a jungle artist. I don't even think I can be a funk artist, right? It's just, you know, cause like, again, there's like a funk aesthetic. There's a funk scene. There's like, you know, there's bands that came up in Toronto that they like sound like that, and they work on the aesthetics and use the right mics and, you know, get the reverbs to sound the same. And it's beautiful. They're playing tribute to a thing. I just like can't do that. I need it to be an amalgam of what I think is honest for me and where my feelings come from as an artist. And that's where I reach for. Yeah.
I feel like with the conscious hip hop artists that you just mentioned, that the artist Common would probably be in there somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
I feel that
Common.
Feels like right in your, you know.
Absolutely. No. Yeah. He's one of them right there.